Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
6:37 on WMAL. Good Monday morning to you. Sherry Jacobus is in for Mary Catherine. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman.
Good to be here.
And by the way, major thanks, major props to you,
yes,
WMAL listeners, once again. An unbelievable performance in the 8th annual Fisher House Radiothon. Almost $256,000 raised. Almost $256,000 raised with our Fisher House Radio Fund. So thank you so much, because that is a huge number, and it's astonishing, in this economic time, that we could raise that much money in just 2 days. So thank you very much. It's a wonderful cause, as you well know, and we appreciate all of your support.
Well, on the line now from the UK, not the United Kingdom,
right.
Britain, as president. That's right, not English. We have a British journalist. He's an author. He's a politician. His name is Daniel John Hannan. He is a member of the European Parliament for South East England, and that is increasingly important right now, because we are beginning to learn in this country that the European crisis it has ramifications to the United States. Have you seen our stock market go up and down,
yes,
like by 1,000 points, dependent on the news out of Europe? So we thought, as key leaders are meeting there, that we'd get Daniel Hannan on the line to sort of explain this. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell me what's going to be happening there and what you expect will be the outcome of these meetings with key leaders.
Well, what should happen is a very easy question. They should accept that the euro is a mistake, and they should unbundle it in an orderly fashion and allow countries to go back to running their own economies in their own interest. Unfortunately, that's very unlikely to be the outcome, because they are determined to keep this thing together pretty much at any cost, or at least at any cost to their peoples, not to them personally, because Eurocrats don't pay national taxes. So what we're going to see, I'm afraid, is more of the same, more of this crisis of deflation and poverty and emigration in the Mediterranean countries, more of these tax hikes to pay the transfer money from the northern countries. The prosperity of Europe is being sacrificed to keep this single currency project going.
Is there a growing sense in the UK that perhaps they should walk away from the euro? You say it's unlikely to happen, but what is the sense of the average person on the street, let's say in downtown London, on this issue?
We're obviously delighted that we didn't join, but that has only been a partial shelter from the storm, because this is the countries that use the euro take about 40% of our exports. It's an important market for us, and their prosperity is obviously in our interest, and they're our friends and our allies. So it's a very bad thing to have this continuing economic turmoil on our doorstep. Unfortunately, the leaders of the Eurozone are determined to give the patient more of the medicine that made him ill in the first place. More European integration, higher taxes, more debt. And bizarrely, our British government is supporting them, whereas what we should be doing is helping them out. To extend the medical metaphor a bit, we're treating the tumor instead of treating the patient. The euro is itself the recessionary mechanism.
Can you go back to when the talk was about creating the euro and why Europe wanted to do this, what they hoped to achieve by having one currency, and why Britain decided to keep the pound?
Well, it was never really about the economics. Nobody really on the continent pretended that. It was always for them about creating a European state, giving that state the attributes and trappings of a proper country, so it would have its own parliament, its own government, its own flag, and so on. And its own currency was part of that project. And because that was their motive, they were surprisingly uninterested in the details of how it would work. And what's now caught up with them is the fact that they never really put in place any plan to deal with the reality that, there is a world of difference between the Greek economy and the German economy. And you can't just wish those differences away. You can't just pretend that their debt is interchangeable and so on. So it's caught up with them now. But, the solution even now is staring them in the face. Let Greece leave the single currency, let it start exporting its way back to growth, price itself into the market with a devaluation. It won't solve everything, but at least it gives the Greeks light at the end of the tunnel. Whereas the present policy of carrying on as we are now is offering decades of more turmoil and slow growth.
Well, would it be worse off for Greece in the short term if they're no longer part of the euro and they go back to their original currency? You talked about an orderly walk away from the euro. First of all, can that be done? But what, in the short term, if you do that, what happens to Greece's economy?
It's very hard to see how anything could be worse than the existing policy. Greece is returning to a barter economy. Nobody's keeping money in the bank. There is spiraling unemployment. GDP is down more than 25% from peak. The country is becoming ungovernable. So, even if there are some technical difficulties with returning to a national currency, how bad do they have to be worse than what we're doing now?
Yeah.
There are no easy solutions from here, right? I mean, if you've got a debt level that the extent that Greece has, or that some of the other Eurozone countries have, there are no easy ways out. We're dealing with least bad alternatives. But there is no question that returning to a competitively priced currency is a less bad alternative than trying to sustain this overvalued exchange rate.
All right, and what happened the other day, last week, with the central banks across the world joining forces and making U.S. dollars more easily available to European banks? Not necessarily, giving them U.S. dollars, not necessarily a bailout. Do you believe that was a bailout, or was that just making things a little bit easier?
Of course it's a bailout, and it's another bailout to the banks. I mean, this is not money that's going to go to, the ordinary people of Greece or Italy or whatever. This is money to bail out the financial institutions that made some foolish investment decisions. You've got to stand back and say, debt is the disease. Debt is not going to be the cure. You would not help an indebted friend by pushing more loans on him, and nor do you help an indebted country by pushing more loans on it. The only solution to this problem, short-term and long-term, is for governments to spend less, to start living within their means, and to start paying off this debt. This kind of Ponzi scheme of all the countries now magicking this extra money out of the air and adding zeros to the amount that's owed, that is what got us into the mess in the first place.
All right.
Well, Daniel Hannan, thank you so much for joining us and giving the perspective over there from the UK. We appreciate you joining us.